Well, hello, everyone. We didn't get to stream last week, I don't think. I think the thing was broken. So hopefully today it is not. But if it is, I'm glad you are here anyway, because this will be streaming at a later time. But where we are right now is we are in Easter. We are actually the Thursday before Easter. And since we're the Thursday before Easter, we're actually going to kind of talk about events that happened then. And so tonight we're kind of talking about Jesus being arrested and talking about his trial. We're going to continue in Matthew 26, and we're going to be in verse 47 to 68. We're not going to run through all of them, but the focus we're going to is this. When you think about a time in your life outside of someone making a great sacrifice, I'll help you out. For many of us, it's right across the street from my house is the veterans, from everyone who's ever served in Spartanburg that's passed away. All right. Vietnam Wall for many people. And oftentimes when somebody passes away, I will see folks out there and you'll see them running their fingers just across the name. And I know this is going to sound weird, but hey, I'm weird. It is what it is. Even in my life, when I go visit a loved one's tomb, a lot of times I'll just put my hand across their name. I know it's just something, but it just reminds me of them. I know that might be a weird thing, not a shaka to any of you guys that way, but I'm sharing that to say, oftentimes when it comes to the cross, we'll forget what Jesus has done for us because we haven't rubbed our hands across his name, across his word. We haven't thought about it. Oftentimes we take it for granted. And the truth of the matter is, we take it for granted until he calls us home. That's not something that we're going to be perfect at doing here. This time of year especially, we've been talking about getting our heart right and getting our heart ready for communion. Many of us took this past Sunday. Some will today because that's when that would happen. And then some will take it Easter Sunday, right, as the resurrection Sunday. But as we want to talk about getting our heart right, oftentimes we've got to be reminded of Jesus' sacrifice and the cost it made. And so for me, on this side of eternity, I often look at the sacrifice. So like I said, I think of the Vietnam Memorial or Memorial or anything like that you would come across. I think in America, that's what is the ultimate sacrifice, is men and women who have paid the price for our freedom and spilled their blood so that we didn't have to. It's a perfect picture. It is what Jesus says. Better can no one do than to lay down one's life for one's friend, right? Greater love has not been shown besides that, right? So that's kind of the perspective I want us to have as Jesus goes through these events. So if you've got your Bible, you're going to see the headlines there. 47, it'll say Jesus arrested, Jesus before the Sanhedrin. Let's talk about Jesus' sacrifice and just be reminded of that in these next few minutes that we have together as we get our heart right for the Christmas. Somebody was listening for the Easter season. So here we go. In verse 50 to 54 is kind of what we want to talk about. And so what's happening if you haven't been there? Jesus here. He is about to be arrested. He's in Gethsemane. Last week we talked about the disciples sleeping. Peter's denied him. Peter's about to deny him, right? And all of a sudden Jesus says his attackers have come to arrest him. Judas Iscariot being the one that is leading them, right? And so this is where we pick up what Jesus says in 50 to 54. Jesus replied, "Do what you came for, friend." Now, we talk about this all the time, but we forget Judas was Jesus' friend. We often just think of Judas as, he's a betrayer. He was at odds with Jesus the whole time in the 3-year ministry, but he wasn't. That was his friend that stabbed him in the back, literally, like stabbed him. That's friend who betrayed him. Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. With that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. John 18:10 through 11 teaches us that it was Peter. Peter, and any other time he recounts his. Anyway, so Peter did this. I'm not going to let that go. Peter cut off the servant's ear, and Jesus restores it in verse 52 and 53. And go on to 54. It says, "Put your sword back in its place." Jesus said to him, "For all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think that I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that it must happen this way?" So think about this. So Jesus is reminding us he is not defenseless way through. He's a lamb brought to the slaughter, which is what he says as his followers we're going to be called. As a lamb going to slaughter. We have to live that way. Gentle as a lamb. We're going to get more into that here in just a minute and be reminded. But what I love about Jesus, he's not defenseless, is it says, "Could I call legions of angels from my Father?" So a Roman legion, there's a lot of leeway there. Some would say that there were at least 4,000. Others would say there were up to 6,000 soldiers in a Roman legion. So did you one legion? No, he said 12. I could give you 12 legions of angels. So conservative, 40,000 angels were standing there with Jesus. High end, 72,000 angels were there with Jesus at this time. And he's saying, hey, I could call them right now, but I can't and I won't, because I'm here to do my Father. Once again, surrendering to my Father's will. So how does this continue out? Jesus now has all of these angels. I think of really quickly, think of as Elijah as standing there saying the servant should be able to see it. When Elijah goes and the chariots of fire, angels. When Jesus was tempted 40 days and 40 nights, there were angels that ministered to him, right? So we think of all the times angels show up. When Jesus was born, the glory of the Lord shone round about the angels, the heavenly host. We see in Revelation all of these angels. So like I said, oftentimes we think of angels, but do you not think those angels that were singing and celebrating for him weren't standing there in that garden with him when he was praying, weren't there with him at this time? And yet he still says, no, I'm not all on them. Same as Satan tempted him to do. Remember, he said, throw yourself off of this temple and you will not hit your head against a stone, a foot will not go against us. In other words, he said, an angel will save you. It'll rescue you. And he didn't do it, right? 56, excuse me. In that hour, Jesus said to the crowd, am I leading a rebellion, that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. But this has all taken place that the prophets might be fulfilled. This is what's the worst part that we often move past. We don't think about this part, but look. Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. So now Judas has come back in the picture. He's the only disciple left. So Judas flees at this moment too. This is Judas starts to have regret because he's realizing what he's done. He's done, right? So Jesus is saying in this moment in time, hey, lead a rebellion. I didn't do what you wanted me to. Remember, just this Palm Sunday, that's what he was supposed to do, is lead the rebellion to overthrow Rome. That was what the Messiah was supposed to do. Restore Israel to his past glory. Restore Israel to being what it was supposed to be. But Jesus again says he can't do that because he is submitting the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled. He said before, so that the scriptures may be fulfilled. He is submitting so that the word would be fulfilled. In this moment, I want you to think what Jesus had to do. He could have called out. He wasn't defenseless. He called out to God to save him. He could have called out to God from the cross. But I want you to think what he is choosing in that space instead by being defenseless, as he chose our sin. Like, this is the backbreaking moment, not the cross. Yes, it's going to the cross. But this is the moment where he really could have mounted a charge. We're going to see his trial was a terrible trial, right? We call it kangaroo court. It's a fake trial. But Jesus in this moment in time, he took our sin. We know that. He dies our sin, but he also died because of our sin. Like, think of it that way. Like, you talk about a sacrifice. He died because of our sin, taking that penalty. As I just want us to think about the victimhood of that and how often we take victimhood in our life and skew it to get our way instead of understand there really was only one true victim, and that is Jesus. About the temptation of Satan. I wrote this down, so it might just be for me, but think about the temptation that Satan had. Do you think Jesus wasn't just tempted by Satan right here? Again, like, that's why he's asking those same questions. Like, I could call all these angels. What is it that he said next? You could take this stone and turn it into bread, right? If you're hungry, think about, do you not think Satan was there at that moment just tempting him? Because think of what would happen if Jesus just went ahead and said, you know what, I'm going to call all these angels. Would a loving father not have sent them? Oh, he absolutely would have, right? But then what would that be for you and me and our hope? Where would our be? If not even the Son of God could do this. Think of that. Think of Jesus and his sacrifice. 59-61 goes on to say this. Jesus goes and they to Caiaphas' house, and Peter follows him at its, probably hiding his sword from somewhere, hoping nobody noticed that he cut an ear off. But we know Peter We know. Anywho, 59 to 61 says the chief priest and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death. Verse 60, but they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, 2 came forward, and this fellow said, I'm able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days. Now, Levitical and Deuteronomical law said you could never convict someone off of one witness's testimony. And when they built the city of refuge, that's what they built them for. They said, anyone who is convicted of manslaughter can go to this city of refuge, and the avenger of blood can attack them as long as they're in this city of refuge, as long as the high priest is alive. Now, once the high priest dies, the avenger of blood can take revenge, right? Think of what I just said. Once the who dies? And who was our high priest? Jesus. Okay. So now you're not put them together. There's a big, deep thing here. So you can put those together. So when it comes to that, now all of a sudden it says you can't have just one witness convict somebody. You have to have 2 witnesses or more. No 2 witnesses agreed until these came forward and said, this is what Jesus said. He said, I'm able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days. Really quick, if you've got a little foot there, it probably tells you, well, Jesus said this somewhere in John, and he actually says it in John 2, verse 19. And this was the actual words of what Jesus said. And this is where it can get. John 2:19, this is the words that Jesus said that they convict him of. Now the witnesses, this fellow said, I'm able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days. John 2:19 is Jesus's actual words. Jesus answered them, destroy this temple in 3 days, and I will raise it again. Destroy this temple, and I will raise it in 3 days. So Jesus said, destroy it, and he will raise it again in 3 days. These people, these false witnesses said he would destroy it and build it in 3 days. You see the difference? So even got to agree was something that Jesus didn't even say. Now, I don't know about you. I would be standing up. That is when you can't handle the truth moment. Like I'm Jack going crazy. I'm Samuel Jackson. Yes, they deserved it. I'm standing up, ready to go. I'm fighting to say, listen, you don't even get my words right. Like, you know what I'm saying? At this moment in time. Yet Jesus continued to stay there and let them speak against him. So the scripture can happen. Now, here's the beauty of it. At this moment in time, Jesus is silent. He's not answering anything. And it's frustrating the elders and the high priest, right? It's frustrating the entire Sanhedrin because they can't trump up any charges against him. So now they get these witnesses that say Jesus can destroy the temple of God and rebuild 3 days. If you were to go look at Levitical law and Deuteronomical law, so Deuteronomy 19:15 there, it is actually blasphemy to destroy or defame or deface temple of God. So this is how they were hoping they were going to kill him. He said he was going to destroy them. So now he's got to die. Stoned to death, or something's got to happen, but he's got to die. It doesn't matter. And they still can't quite get it right. It goes on to say this in 62, really quickly. Then the high priest and said, are you not going to answer? What is the testimony of these men are bringing against you? What is this testimony these men are bringing against you? 63 says, but Jesus remained silent. It doesn't have it in your footnote there, but Isaiah 53:7 points to why Jesus remains silent is because, again, we are reminded of the Passover lamb and Jesus being our lamb, our sacrificial lamb. Now, before we get to 63 and 64 and almost wrap up our time here, our 45 minutes here. I'm just kidding. I know it hasn't taken that long, but before we wrap this up, I do want us to think about something. The Passover lamb was a lamb without what?
Sin.
Without blemish, right? Without a defect. It had to be a pure lamb. Now, why would it not be a sheep? Ever thought about that? Most of the time you see a 1-year-old ewe or a lamb, but you do have to sacrifice sheep, but this blameless lamb that was sacrificed could not have defect. So now I'm going to say, why wasn't it a sheep? I want to ask you something. Do you think the lamb fought back, or a sheep would fight back for his freedom? A sheep would. Now, Jesus is our sacrificial lamb, but we are his sheep, right? Now you see why we kick and scream against him for our freedom when he's the only thing that is our freedom? So think about this. So it has to be a sheep. A sheep didn't fight being sacrificed. And this is why a lamb, didn't fight back being sacrificed. It doesn't know any better. That sounds horrible, I know, but think about it. Whereas a full-grown sheep's like, man, man, I got 3 bags full, man. I'm Baba Black Sheep, man. I got stuff to do. But a baby lamb, it's not. This is why Jesus stays silent. This is another way he is showing that he is our lamb. Just reading that, thinking about that is like how many times I well up with pride of, man, I would have been fighting back. I mean, Jesus has got something in there in my pride. I would want to fight back. I want to fight back even if I was guilty, because I would just be like, it's still false accusation against me. If they go into Jewish law, most Jewish elders would tell you this trial not only couldn't have happened, they should not have allowed multiple false witnesses come up that couldn't agree until they finally got to the 2. But this shows hell bent Satan was, and these leaders were, on killing Jesus because of his threat to their power. See how Caiaphas plays out. Now that we've kind of gotten to the really crazy, weird stuff, I know that I said, but it said in 3, but Jesus remained silent, and then Caiaphas goes back, read 63 and 64. The high priest said to him, I charge you under oath by the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. And in verse 64, Jesus responds, you have said, Jesus replied, but I say to all of you, from on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the mighty one, coming on the clouds of heaven. Now, why does this matter? So Caiaphas is the one leading the charge. What do you need to know about Caiaphas? We've talked about him before. Caiaphas is the high priest. His term was 4 years. How long do you think he served? That's right, 19. He served 19 years as the high priest. He's not powery at all, right? He's not fighting for power. So Caiaphas is the one leading the charge here, and he's upset he can't get these witnesses because they falsely accused him of destroying and defaming the temple, which, just remember, at the beginning of the week, he just drove all the money changers out. This is that same week on Palm Sunday. He just drove all these money changers out and said, I'm making my Father's house a den of thieves. This same Jesus, they couldn't kill him there. So now Caiaphas is what he probably told 15 people to say, and they couldn't remember. He says, are you saying you are God? Blasphemy. And this is how they decide to kill Jesus. So think about that. Jesus says, he remains silent the whole time, and he says, you said so. In other words, the very truth of who Jesus is the thing that got him killed. By speaking the truth and being our truth, it's what brought him to the cross. So, think of it on a fleshly perspective. That's the thing that killed him. He said, hey, you said so. And hey, from now on, the Son of Man is going to come on the clouds. I mean, he's talking about his impending return. He's talking about his ascension and coming back again. He's like, hey, you're not even going to see me in this form anymore because you're about to kill me. And then I'm going to be resurrected in the resurrected body. It was the actual truth. So all this false evidence came against him and couldn't take him down, and it was the actual truth that brought him to the cross. Think of that sacrifice. Like a fence you and I would mount, I know how I fight for my innocence. Fight, even though I know I'm not. The problem is, Bryce, that's all I did is I fought him trying to claim my innocence, knowing I was guilty. And now that I understand I'm guilty and he took my guilt and punishment, now I can be as innocent as he is, right? Because I'm covered in him. Verse 65, 68 is kind of where we're going to end tonight. And we're thinking about this sacrifice. Then the high priest is closed. You want to talk about, and the Oscar goes to, Caiaphas, you didn't think he was trying to plead and plot and find a way all along. Now all of a sudden he's got him. We got him. He's there. He's got him. He's ripping his clothes. He's making a big scene. This is the moment. He tears his clothes and said, "He has spoken blasphemy. We need to hear any more witnesses." In other words, he wasn't getting what he wanted out of the witnesses. So he had it off. "Now you have heard this blasphemy. What do you think?" Well, and inside the nation of Israel, they were called to have their own judges inside of the tribe. So in all the Sanhedrins there. So now they all are going to be in agreement on what should happen. And he looks at him and says, "What do you think?" And they all answer, "Worthy of death." Then they spit in his face and struck him with their fist. Others slapped him and said, "Prophesy to us, Messiah. Who hit you?" So again, think about this. Think about all the options Jesus had to answer to Caiaphas, what this looks like. Jesus remains silent even then, as they are spitting on him. Right then, he could have just said, "The Son of God, I'll do this." And an angel, think if he had one angel appear, it would have stopped him. Absolutely. If he had one stone turned to bread, it would have stopped him. If he would have took their McDonald's 5,000 with it in front of them, it should have stopped them, but their hard heart wouldn't let them. So what am I trying to get at? Look at all that Jesus went through. And do we remember that? See, when Caiaphas asked him that question about who he was, if he was the Son of God, Jesus had really three options. He could and refused to answer Caiaphas away as a criminal offense. It would have got him flogged. He still would have been called a criminal. He could have said, "I'm not." And then he was another has-been. He would have been another Barabbas. He would have been another Simon the Zealot that overthrew Rome, tried to do something. He would have, the last fad, he would have just faded out. Or he could have said yes and had the full force of the law upon him, which is what he is in the place, isn't he? The law become flesh for us. So think of all of that in Jesus's life and what he did for you and I. And the reason I bring all that up is oftentimes I try to be the law. I try to be on myself and on others, right? I want to pass judgment. I want to be the one to say, I have the higher ground than you, and I'm no better than Caiaphas. Even though I feel good for a minute, usually the guilt set that rush after my blood goes down and I'm just just bloodlust in my face, no better way to say it, but just all hopped up and fired, and I'm just like, that was awful. I remember the thorns that Jesus is about to wear and the sacrifice he made, because to defend himself, he just spoke the truth. Oftentimes I don't like that. I want to speak the truth, maybe 99.9% of it. Just a little, halfway tear my clothes. I don't want to tear my clothes. I just want to, I just want to Caiaphas it a little bit. I want to rip my shirt just a little bit to show my anger, but it does no good. So why are we saying remember Jesus' sacrifice? Because if we don't remember, we'll often forget the price that was paid for us. But also, we neglect to share him with others. When I'm like Caiaphas and I'm in my judgmental side, it's really hard for me to share Jesus. And it's not because of my words, because of my actions. It's because my heart isn't focused on him. My mind is focused on him. And so over these next few days, I think that's the best thing that we as Christians can do this time of year is fully be on him. Everyone betrayed him. Judas betrays him. Everyone flees from him. Peter's watching from a distance. And his father is about him because he has to, because of sin. And yet he still does it. And I know that we think, well, that's some great lofty thing. And I bring us back to where we started. That same soldier that gets on a ship and goes and fights a war 1,000 miles away for our freedom, to make sure we preserve the way of life we have, is mimicking that sacrifice. And so we can see it in human form. But when we know that it was really God in human form for us doing that, we will share it until we can't scream any louder, until our voice runs out. So that's kind of what I wanted to share tonight. And the long time that we spent together. It's been a long talking. There's a lot in there, but I just want us to be reminded of Jesus' sacrifice. Like, just miss it. We just look over it. I think, lastly, the thing I saw the most was obviously, and it goes back there, but it's been in our lifetime, but it wasn't in my lifetime before. It was the Passion. Like, the way that it just depicts Jesus being beaten, going to like that whole scene. Like, I don't think I've ever watched it without crying, and I'm not afraid of it. You can judge me all you want, I really care, but just when you think of that, but the reason so much is we don't think of the brutality of it, but we don't think of it just would have been for Jesus to be like, you know what, like these people, they're going to crucify me. I'm going to wait a couple thousand years before I try it again. And he didn't. So we live on this side of the cross. So that's why we share him. So maybe wherever you are right now, I'm saying all that to say, Caiaphas, you keep trying to defend yourself and it's not doing you any good. Maybe you're the false witnesses hoping that it gets you some standing by lying about it, gossiping and tearing people down. And it didn't do any good. They didn't even gain any favor with the court, with the people they were lying to. They couldn't even put the charges over on Jesus. Maybe you were following him and going every once in a while and had been around Jesus enough, but don't really. But in this moment, you fled him. The cross still stands, and the ground is still even at the cross. Come to him, focus on him, remember his sacrifice, and remember what he's done for us in spite of us, and walk in the freedom of it. Because you and I don't have to die on the cross. You and I don't have to do that. You and I don't have anybody having to question us and saying, hey, we're going to kill you because of that. Now, there are missionaries around the world that may have that, but you and I have the freedom that they don't. So I say all that to say, under that this Easter season. Thank you for hanging out with us. Spent a long time together online, but I thank you for those who are hanging out with us. We're going to talk about this a little bit and pray, and then we're going to have a good night. And I hope wherever you're watching Easter when this happens, so I hope you have a very happy. Keep it all focused on Jesus, but also share him with everyone who comes in your path. If you would like prayer, shoot us a message. We'd love to pray with and for you. Come hang out. We'd love to see your smiling face. Always remember, the best is yet to come.